It was a quiet afternoon when Mark, a book enthusiast, decided to visit the old forgotten library at the edge of town. The locals often spoke of it in hushed tones, warning curious souls to stay away. They claimed the library had a dark history, one that no one dared to uncover. But Mark, with his love for rare and ancient books, couldn't resist. As he stepped inside, the musty smell of aged paper and dust filled the air. Rows of books lined the shelves, untouched for years. But then, his eyes fell on something unusual, a book unlike the others. It was bound in dark leather, its edges worn, and the title barely legible. "The Cursed Book," it read, its name sending an unsettling chill down Mark's spine. Something about it felt wrong, but the allure of the unknown was too strong. Mark pulled the book from the shelf, and as he did, a soft creak echoed through the room, like a warning. The pages inside were yellowed, filled with cryptic symbols and strange, twisted illustrations. His curiosity got the better of him, and Mark began to read aloud. Little did he know, that moment would change his life forever. As Mark read further into the book, the words seemed to blur together, almost as if the pages were shifting before his eyes. A strange sensation crept up his spine, an eerie feeling that something was watching him. The library, once quiet, now felt suffocating. Mark shook off the feeling and continued reading, unaware of the dark forces slowly awakening around him. The book spoke of an ancient curse, one that bound the souls of those who read it, forever entwining their fate with the book's sinister power. Mark's fingers trembled as he flipped to the next page, revealing an ominous warning. "Do not finish what you have started, or you will never return." His heart raced. What was this? Was it a warning, or just a part of the story? Mark's thoughts raced, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He couldn't stop now. But the deeper he went into the text, the more unsettling the descriptions became. Strange symbols began to appear in the margins of the pages, and the temperature in the library dropped drastically. The air grew heavier, and a shadow seemed to move in the corner of his eye. Mark quickly turned around, but there was nothing there. He brushed it off as his imagination playing tricks on him. But deep down, he knew something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the book began to glow faintly, and Mark's hands began to shake uncontrollably. The symbols on the pages seemed to writhe as if alive. The words felt more like a chant than a story now, and Mark's mind started to cloud. He heard whispers, faint but distinct, calling his name. As he tried to close the book, he felt a force gripping his hand, unwilling to let go. Panic surged through him, but it was too late. The curse had already taken hold. Mark tried to pull his hand away from the book, but it was as if the pages were holding him hostage. The whispers grew louder, more desperate, as if the voices were fighting for his attention. The words on the pages began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls of the library. His breath became shallow, his mind swirling with confusion and fear. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to stop, but he couldn't. His curiosity was stronger than ever. Something inside him told him that if he stopped now, it would be worse. A cold wind rushed through the library, flipping pages of other books with violent force. But Mark couldn't tear his eyes away from the cursed pages. The words on the pages shifted, rearranging themselves into a new, horrifying message. "You have summoned us. There is no turning back now." Mark's heart pounded in his chest as the room seemed to grow darker, the shadows stretching out to swallow him whole. He tried to scream, but his voice was caught in his throat. Suddenly, the door to the library slammed shut, trapping him inside. The temperature dropped so low that Mark could see his breath in front of him. His hands, still gripping the book, began to feel numb, as if the very life was being drained from him. The whispers grew louder, now unmistakably coming from the shadows themselves, surrounding him. He turned in every direction, but no one was there. Yet, the air felt thick with unseen eyes, watching his every move. Mark's pulse raced, his mind clouded by the horror of what he had unleashed. The book, once an object of curiosity, was now his worst nightmare. Was he truly trapped in this cursed story? Or was this all some twisted dream he couldn't wake up from? The shadows seemed to press closer, suffocating the air around Mark. He could feel their cold, icy fingers creeping along his skin, as if they were trying to drag him into the darkness. His heart raced, and his legs trembled beneath him. The book in his hands now felt impossibly heavy, as though it was bound with something far darker than just paper and ink. The whispers were louder now, chaotic and frantic, as if the voices were fighting for control of his mind. "Why did you read it?" one of the whispers hissed. "You cannot escape." Mark's eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for any way out, but the library was changing. The walls seemed to stretch and twist, the once familiar space now becoming a labyrinth of shadows and dark corners. The windows were covered in a thick fog, making it impossible to see outside. Mark's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. The book. Was it the source of this nightmare? Or had it simply awakened something much darker? He looked at the pages again, and the words had changed. They were no longer just warnings. They were instructions. To break the curse, one must give up what they hold most dear. The meaning of the message hit him like a cold slap. What did the book want from him? What did he hold dear enough to give up? Suddenly, the floor beneath Mark seemed to tremble. He staggered back as a low growl rumbled through the room. His eyes widened in terror as the shadows began to take shape. Dark, twisted figures that seemed to claw their way out of the walls. They were coming for him. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. There was no escape. The curse was real, and he had unleashed it upon himself. Mark's breath quickened, and his heart pounded louder in his ears. He turned to the book, desperate to find a way to stop the terror he had unleashed. But the page turned on its own, revealing a horrifying image. An open door, but beyond it, the void of endless darkness. "Are you ready to face what's coming?" a voice in his head asked, cold and mocking. The shadows closed in on him. Mark had no choice. He had to face the curse head on. Mark's legs gave way beneath him as the shadows in the room gathered, forming twisted, monstrous shapes that seemed to pulsate with dark energy. The walls, once solid, now seemed to writhe and distort, bending and stretching as if alive. The whispers became a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once, each one trying to break through his mind, drowning him in a storm of terror. He tried to scream, but the sound was lost in the madness, swallowed by the overwhelming darkness. His mind raced, searching for a way out, but there was no escape. There was only the cursed book, its presence now suffocating, filling the room with an ominous weight that pressed down on his chest. The figures in the shadows grew larger, their eyes glowing with malevolent hunger as they moved toward him, their steps heavy and slow, like predators stalking their prey. Mark's eyes darted to the open door depicted in the cursed book. It seemed like his only way out, the faintest glimpse of light in the overwhelming darkness. But the words on the page burned into his mind. To break the curse, one must give up what they hold most dear. What did that mean? What did the book want from him? His thoughts blurred together as the figures drew nearer, their twisted forms becoming clearer. Mark could feel the heat of their presence, the cold tendrils of their fingers brushing against his skin. The air was thick with dread, and the ground beneath him seemed to crack open, threatening to swallow him whole. In the midst of his terror, he remembered something his grandmother had once said. The mind is a powerful thing. You are never truly trapped unless you believe you are. Could it be true? Could his mind, his will, be strong enough to break free from this curse? With every ounce of strength he had left, Mark turned to the book, his hands trembling. The words blurred in front of him, but he forced himself to read them again. Give up what you hold most dear. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. What he held most dear wasn't a possession, a place, or even a person. It was his own life, his very soul, the desire to remain in control in his own world. The curse was feeding on his fear, on his unwillingness to let go. Mark closed his eyes, summoning every last ounce of courage he had. "I give you my fear," he whispered into the darkness. "I release it." The room fell silent. The shadows stopped moving, their twisted forms freezing in place. Mark opened his eyes, and the oppressive atmosphere around him began to lift. The figures in the room began to fade, the darkness slowly receding as the light of the library began to return. The air, once cold and suffocating, became warm again, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Mark's heart was still pounding, but the terror that had once consumed him was gone. The book, once glowing ominously, now sat quietly in his hands, its pages still, its curse broken. The door in the cursed book was no longer a symbol of dread, but a reminder of his victory. Mark took a deep breath, finally feeling free from the oppressive hold the book had on him. He had faced the darkness, not with power, but with acceptance, letting go of the fear that had bound him to the curse. The library, once full of foreboding energy, now felt peaceful, almost serene. The whispers, the shadows, the growling figures, they were all gone, leaving only the silence of a world that was finally at peace. Mark slowly placed the book back on the shelf where it belonged and stepped away from it, his heart still racing but no longer in fear. He had survived. But what would happen next? The book was still there, waiting for someone else to make the same mistake. Mark took a few steps back, his feet heavy as he felt the weight of what he had just experienced. The library around him was quiet now, the once oppressive atmosphere now calm, almost peaceful. He felt a strange sense of clarity, as if the curse had not only been broken, but had given him a deeper understanding of his own mind. For the first time in what felt like hours, he could think clearly. His thoughts were no longer clouded with fear. The shadows that had once been so threatening now seemed almost harmless, mere figments of his imagination. But there was one lingering question that refused to leave his mind. Was the curse truly broken, or was it only waiting for the right moment to return? The book still lay on the shelf, its dark cover gleaming under the dim light of the room. Mark's eyes locked onto it, the temptation to approach it once again almost overwhelming. He knew what it had done to him, how it had twisted his world, and yet the pull of its dark power was undeniable. He took a deep breath, shaking off the urge to return to it. No, he thought, he wouldn't make the same mistake again. Mark turned away from the book and walked toward the door of the library, his mind heavy with the realization that this was only the beginning. The curse may have been broken, but the danger was still very real. The book was not just an object, it was a doorway, a gateway to something much darker, something that fed on fear and manipulated the mind. He had faced it, survived it, but could he truly escape it? Was anyone truly safe from the dark things hidden within the pages? As Mark reached the door and stepped outside into the cool night air, he couldn't help but glance back over his shoulder. The library behind him seemed peaceful now, but he knew better. Something told him that the book was far from harmless, and it would only be a matter of time before someone else, like him, was drawn to its sinister power. And when that happened, who would be there to stop it? Who would be strong enough to break the curse before it consumed them? As the door clicked shut behind him, Mark's thoughts raced. He had broken free, but the world had changed, and so had he. The book had taught him one final lesson. Fear could only control you if you let it. He had let it go, but the journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. With a deep breath, Mark turned away, knowing that whatever came next, he would be ready. What do you think of the ending? Do you believe Mark truly broke free, or is the curse still lingering? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysterious tales.